Okay, I'm in a little bit more relaxed gear. Actually, anyway, should change out my t-shirt. I'm at home, obviously. So here we are in the second part of Chapter 9. We're looking at organizational authority. And there's a lot of different nuances and aspects to that. So let's get into it. The first thing we want to review, and the reason we're reviewing this is something that we learned in Chapter 2. Foyle talks about chain of command and unity of command. Chain of command is the vertical authority that clarifies who reports to who. So if I am up in the chain of command, maybe I am a VP of marketing, I have several managers of marketing working for me, and then there's team leads working for those managers. As the VP of marketing, I have authority to give commands or instructions or, please do this. We usually are polite to my managers and their team leads. Now, usually in the chain of command, it's kosher or it's good manners not to skip over your managers to command below your managers. So usually you give orders or directions to the people that directly report to you. Sometimes people don't do this. Sometimes it's expedient that they don't do it and they just have to skip things around. But normally that's what we want to do. Unity of command says that workers should report just to one boss. Now, there are organizational structures that go against this unity of command. But the reason why we have unity of command is so people don't get confused. If I have one boss saying that I need to do X and the other one saying that I need to do Y, you want to be a good employee and you want to serve both of them, but if they're conflicting, which one do you choose and why? And we don't want that to happen, at least as little as possible. So the idea is we have a unity of command where I'm receiving one direction. In a matrix organization, I might be in a purchasing department, and I have my purchasing manager, and that's who I'm direct line report to. By dotted line report to other people that I serve, and those might be different product lines or maybe even a plant maintenance group. And so I have managers in those areas that are giving me instruction too. And if I have conflicting things, then probably I'll go to my manager first and let him work it out with the other managers. Okay, now we're going to talk about authority. Line authority means that I have the ability to give directions to people under me, right? People who report to me. I'm going to change my shirt. Now I feel better. Okay, so line authorities, I have the ability to command people who report to me. Staff authority means that I can't necessarily command them or give them direction, but I can advise them on how to act. A lot of times we'll go to our legal team to ask for advice on how to interact with somebody, or I might be a plant or a line manager, product line manager of one line, and I'm seeing something go wrong with another line, so I might go to their team lead and say, hey, I think you should do this. But because he doesn't report to me, it isn't in my chain of command, I can only advise. Unless in some circumstances, you have a manager of a shift. So I might be a line manager, and then every Thursday I take on swing shift 2, where I look over all lines. And they don't directly report to me, but given that shift and that I have authority. And we'll talk about that a little bit in delegation. Now there's line functions, which have to do with the chain of command. And also, let me back up. Line functions and line authority are different things. Line authority is the chain of command. Line function is a position which is customer facing. Normal customer facing positions are marketing and manufacturing. So in both circumstances, I might be directly interacting with the customer to make sure that we're meeting customer demands and that they're satisfied and we have high customer service. Support functions are where we're not facing the customer, but we're supporting those that do face the customer. So staff functions are things like purchasing, legal, human resources, right? We are supporting the product lines or the marketing guys that are interacting with the customer. Now, I've read that if you want to move up in the chain in the echelons of your company faster, it's important to secure positions in line function positions and get that interaction with the customer. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about delegation. And delegation is where a manager gives responsibility and authority to a subordinate. Sometimes it's not even a subordinate. It might be even a fellow manager, like I was saying. Normally, I have control over all the production in my product line, and except when I'm not there on a swing shift. And I might split who's responsible for swing shift with the other product line managers. So I'm responsible on Monday, and I'm responsible for all the product lines production during that swing shift. I'm not usually making purchase orders or asking people to buy stuff, but I'm making sure work gets done, and there's if employees have a need or concern, that I can address that. So I'm giving responsibility and authority to somebody else when I'm not there on the swing shift, and then they're accountable to me for that. Now, one of the things that delegation that we don't have here, but it's an important aspect of delegation, is resources. So if I give a subordinate the responsibility and the authority to get something done, that authority inherently includes resources. And sometimes we forget what resources are needed to accomplish a task. And we might need our subordinate to say, hey, look, in order for me to succeed, I need these resources, right? And then we need to make sure that they're there, or we're setting them up for failure. So, again, responsibility and authority goes to our subordinate, and they're accountable for us to make sure things get done. Now we're going to talk about centralization in our organization. The degree of centralization is who has the authority to make decisions for the company. You know that when you call a call center, a help center, and they say, I don't know if we can do that, let me talk to my manager, that's not a centralized or a decentralized group, that's a centralized group. So they have to go to the manager to get an okay to give you a refund or do a recall or whatever it is that they need. They need their permission. Decentralized, a more decentralized organization, you'll have the people actually answering the calls able to make those decisions. And there's benefits to decentralization, but there's also benefits to centralization. We're going to emphasize decentralization because there's other things that we'll get into in a little bit. Standardization is the idea that whenever X problem happens, we do 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have standard procedures for how to react in any given situation. You see this a lot in the ER. Somebody comes in with head trauma, and they're acting this way and this way and this way. So what we do is we'll do, if A, B, and C are true, then we'll do a CAT scan. Or we'll take what we have standards that we do under given circumstances. In a hospital, they have a more centralized authority because the EMT can only do so much for a patient. A nurse can only do so much more for a patient. So a nurse might say, hey, I can give you aspirin or Advil or ibuprofen, but if you need morphine, we have to go to the doctor. So there are things that are centralized, and there are some things that are more decentralized in the hospital environment. Same is true with in like a medical device manufacturing, because it's so regulated. There's certain calls that are only something that an engineer can call, right? Or a manager can make a call on something, right? If we're going to use something that is non-standard in the manufacturing process, we have to get somebody to write off on it to say we understand what we're doing, and the reason why it's okay to do this is so and so. So in some ways, we want that centralized authority, so we reduce liability. But the advantages of decentralization are it develops the employees' capabilities. They have to make calls, whether we want to do X or Y. The decisions are made faster. Employees feel more ownership, and therefore they're more satisfied, and they can satisfy the customer more. And we usually actually get better employee performance because they're more invested. I think we're going to stop there, and then we'll move on with the jobs in part 3.